So anyways, yes, try to see if for every person that you get a referral, number one is Mrs. Jones. Do you know what their spouse's name is? I just say the word spouse, that kind of covers all types of partnerships. And who do you 100% have to ask that question about? Every time you have a man's name as one of your referrals. I'm looking at the new person right now. You have to make sure that every time you see the man's name on the referral list, and Dre's them too, since you're a new guy and you haven't heard me yell about this as many times, is you have to make sure you ask what's his spouse's name. If he has no spouse, you do not call. Don't do demos for single guys. Yes, the 1 out of 10 will buy something, but the other 9 are not going to buy anything. And then you're going to get a bunch of other referrals to a bunch of single guys. And I'd rather you do 3 appointments with married couples than 10 appointments with single guys. Your success ratio will be infinitely higher. So yes, qualify your referrals. You want to take a step further in the referrals? Here's another question I could buy. Mrs. Jones, out of these referrals that you gave me, who of them would probably want to have their husband or spouse there to make a decision if they wanted to buy a set? I'll ask that question too. They know this about their friends. I've got 3 married couples. Ashley wants to ask Drew. Angie will do whatever she wants. And then Jen, it depends on the scenario. But most of the time she'll get whatever she wants. Depends on what part of the house that it's for. So my point is that I know that about 2 of my referrals that I would give you if you were doing a demo for me, if you're asking who are my married couple friends. Okay, so you need to ask that question. Mrs. Jones, which of these would want to have their spouse there if they wanted to invest in a set? If they wanted to invest in a set. All right, let's keep going. Next, additions to the demo to set up the buying process. You might want to get your training manual out and just write this into the manual. You want to do it that way, or if you want to put it into your notes, put it off to the side, or whatever you prefer is fine. All right, so first bullet point, extra rapport building questions. So Mrs. Jones, what does your spouse do? Mrs. Jones, what does your spouse do? Sometimes the spouse's job can be a little bit of a tell. Look around the house for tips of what the family's involved with, or just ask about them. Mrs. Jones, what are some fun things you guys like to do on the weekends? It's a great way to say, what are some of your hobbies? What are some fun things that you like to do on the weekend? Are you guys into any outdoor stuff? That'll handle barbecuing, gardening. If I'm going to a customer's house, I'm going to keep an eye out for 2 main things that we'll talk about in a minute. One of them is a set of golf clubs, and the other one is a toolbox. Those are 2 really, really helpful things that if you can eyeball. And if you are going on Facebook and you see any of those 2 things anywhere, especially the golf clubs, that should be a very, very easy way to help you sell Cutco. We'll talk about that shortly. Ask questions that are exploration questions for who is spending the money on things. Mrs. Jones, who takes care of most of the gardening stuff? Mrs. Jones, who takes care of most of the barbecue stuff? Who's the person in charge of decorating the house? Was it you? If you're curious, what do I say to kind of bring this up? Is this kind of weird to just start asking these sort of personal questions? You can preempt it by saying, Mrs. Jones, Is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions about your home? We have so many customization options that it'll help me give you some guidance in case you do end up wanting to get anything. Hey, do you mind if I ask you some questions about your home? We have a lot of customization options. So it'll help me out in case you are interested in taking a look or getting anything. I like to say just in case. Right, so it's a little bit less pressure, but still confident and bold. At the bottom of page number 2, you've got that magical question, Mrs. Jones, do you cook because you have to, you like to, or you love to? And they'll say whichever one and be like, and by the way, who does most of the cooking in the house? You know, if you're asking my wife, she's like, well, I typically cook Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, you know, my husband will sometimes barbecue on Saturdays and Sundays. That's pretty normal. We'll get takeout about once a week, but we have like a very kind of traditional sort of cooking scenario. And if she's like, oh, I do, you're like, oh, okay. So you're the kitchen guru? Cool. We both do. All right. So does he know like what quality kitchen are, or does he just kind of use whatever's in the house? Does he know does he know about the quality kitchen stuff, or does he just kind of grab that one random knife, or, you know, whatever is the drawer? He's like, oh, no. He's more of the knife guy than I am. Or, nah, he just kind of grabs whatevs and throws on the grill. So all that information is going to be helpful in your closing process. He does all the cooking. Hey, that's great for you, right? Well, we'll keep our eyes open for the things that might be good for him. And the reason I ask is because we used to try to only see husbands and wives together, but we figured out over the years, most husbands just say, get whatever is best for you. That sentence is really helpful because we're trying to coach the customer into thinking about how she's going to make decisions at the end. Because that is pretty true. If my wife was like, well, let me wait to see what Damien wants, I would be like, well, why don't you just get what you like? And then if I use it and I like it, then we'll get more of stuff that I would like too. So what we have just found is that most husbands just say, just get what's best for you. So now we mainly just see the wives or whoever does the cooking. All right, so let's go ahead and flip over to page number 5 where you have the forever guarantee. When you're going over the forever guarantee, you guys on it? You want to make sure you write down the words Craftsman tool or Snap-on tools. Mr. Jones, are you guys familiar with Craftsman tools or Snap-on tools? Does you or your spouse own some by any chance? If they say, yes, we do, did you buy all of them together, or is it just your spouse that bought them? Like, you couldn't get any, you know, they're like attached to this one, but it's a little covered.
I have some stuff that's good in here.
Okay. All right, you want to open to page 5?
Okay.
So on page 5, you'll want to write the words Craftsman tool, Snap-on tools as a reminder to trigger the question. Do you guys, are you guys familiar with Craftsman or Snap-on tools? Awesome. Do you or your spouse own some? And then this is the question that you want to make sure you ask. Did you buy them together, or is it just your husband? Together? Cool. So now she knows the value of high quality tools. Husband. Yeah, that's kind of normal. The husband buys the things that would be for things that he uses the most. Again, you are pre-positioning a lot of the objections that you might get. Right? So why are we saying that? Because at the end, we're going to say, Mrs. Jones, remember how your husband didn't consult with you when he bought the Craftsman tools? And you have to say that with kind of that smile, because she knows that you're right if you just say it with a smile, right? You know how he didn't really consult with you, but you appreciate that you have good quality tools for the home. Yeah, this is like the same thing, but for the kitchen. You nod and they nod because it's nodding. All right. If they say, and you know, you ask like, hey, are you familiar with them? Do you own any? If they say yes. If they're not familiar with them, well, Craftsman and Snap-on have lifetime guarantees. They're the best of its type, just like Cutco. Is the best kitchen cutlery, and we offer a forever guarantee. Unfortunately, Craftsman tools and Snap-on tools forever guarantee isn't as good as it used to be. It's still pretty awesome, but also those types of tools, we bring them up is because they are not cheap. You can spend $70 on a hammer for some stuff like that. Why do they buy it? Because the stuff from Target breaks after a while and it's a piece of crap. When you get to the misuse and abuse, Mrs. Jones, we have this, the husband guarantee. If you want to put this in there. You know, since he isn't as educated on the kitchen knives as you are today, we have the husband guarantee. Our husband guarantee is if you get your Cutco and he doesn't really like them very much, you can send your husband back to our factory. We'll get him educated and send him back to you for free. Just kidding, Mrs. Jones. The husband guarantee means that you got 15 days to try it out, and if you don't love it, we offer you free return shipping. The questions asked. And you guys know that's something I offer as a sound markets manager. Okay, meaning if you have a customer that wants to return their knives because they didn't like the quality, you can offer to pay for the return shipping. And then when they call you to do the return shipping, just return back, reply. Wrong number, who this? Okay, just.
That would go whenever you're talking about the 15 days, instead of like, you don't always share both of the spouses together. Instead, you could just do like I said, kind of transitions.
Yeah. You know, since just he isn't as educated, that's a really valuable thing to say because you're going to use it at the end when you're handling objections that he isn't as educated on it. Same reason why you didn't buy that Snap-on tools, because you're not educated about them. Go to the names and uses, page 6, page 7. This is where you can add the question if the husband isn't there. Ms. Jones, do you or your husband play any golf? If they say no, be like, no problem. Ms. Jones, do you guys have tools in the garage? Yes. Well, isn't it nice to have the right tool for the right job? If they say yes, do you both play or is it just him? If it's just him, does he have just like one golf club or do you know, or does he have like a whole set? I don't think that question, does he have a whole set, is there? And does he just buy them and when you're not really there, he just kind of picks up pieces that you want? She might be like, I don't know. But yeah, there's a whole set there. Well, you know, there's more than one club because the game is easier and more efficient. So you know they come in a set because the game is easier. So you kind of have a little bit of like a choose your own adventure based on what she says. If yes, do you both play or is it just him? See if it's just him, does he have one golf club or do you know, or does he just buy them and you know, you aren't really there? If she is there, so do you know they come in a set because the game is easier, right? Exactly. If he just buys them, well, you know there's more than one club because the game is easier and more efficient. Question wants to buy an ultimate set.
No, I thought you just sent me 3 more referrals.
How nice of her. Is it interest set, lady?
It was ultimate 7.
Okay.
Not even 7.
All right, for the average family, within the line that we say for the average family, Mrs. Jones, do you do the grocery shopping or do both of you? If she says I do it, the wife does it. You know, so we consider average family one that spends about $200 to $300 on a grocery trip. Is that about average for you guys? Okay, so why do we bring up that number?
Would be about that.
Monthly payments for a homemaker or a galley are right around that much. So when you watch me do the demo next Saturday, on Saturday here, you're gonna hear a lot of like, Mrs. Jones, it's sort of like a blank. I try to normalize their, like how they feel about payments by saying, Mrs. Jones, kind of like a grocery bill. That'll be the easiest one on a homemaker set. It's kind of like a grocery bill. And then I'll use smaller examples based on the amount that the average payment is. All right, let's move on to the closing here. And then here's what's great. If you've actually done a lot of this stuff in advance, you might not, she might already in her mind have rationalized it for herself. Or maybe you're talking to the breadwinner, or maybe it's one of those marriages where she buys whatever she wants, and that's great. There are some marriages where there's a certain dollar amount in her head that she won't feel comfortable. And she's not going to tell you whatever the number is unless you're really close to them and you're just very bold about it. But I think a lot of that is going to be above $300. You know, I want to discuss it with my husband. And that here's what that means. I really, really, really like this, and I want to get a set. So you did a good job, but you just did a good job with the person who is not able to buy the job you just sold. So you need to be there to help her get Cutco today, right? You have to help her fall out of love with the Homemaker Signature and Ultimate Set. Because what you did is you made her fall in love with it. You presented all of the problems that she's had for the last 20 years of cooking. You've shown her solutions for everything, and it looks in a nice big set and package. And you know, Mrs. Jones wants the whole feeling of the completion of it, and she fell in love with it. She's got an emotional relationship to it now. And you've got to break her heart and then move it to a smaller heart, right? Move it to a smaller thing. And so the first thing she'll oftentimes say is, I want to get this set for sure. Super excited. I want to talk to my spouse. I don't want to see anything smaller. This is what I want. She's got her heart set on it. Anybody ever had that scenario happen before? Yeah, Gilly had it happen to her yesterday. You know, the adrenaline was there and you were in love with her. You were in love with her love. You were in love with her love. But you got to realize that just a impetuousness, it's just impulsive, it's just an emotion. It can change very quickly, and you can make her fall in love with something a little bit more realistic. You know, maybe for the ladies, you might relate to this. Maybe there was like a prom dress that you saw that was like way too much money the first time you looked at it. Anybody ever had that scenario? Hey, was that something that happened to you? No, you ended up going for that one anyways. Well, I promise you, maybe in the future, you will see, gentlemen, a wedding ring that is lovely for your lady, and all of a sudden you'll realize you can't afford it. Or ladies, you'll see a wedding dress that is lovely, but you'll realize after a while that you can't afford it. And if the salesperson is good, they will be able to do for you what you're trying to do right now for Mrs. Jones. Because isn't that kind of a weird thing? You like the person just fell in love with it and they're like, oh, well, you know what? Let me hold off on getting married for 5 years until I can afford this. Really? This is what you think that's helping the customer? No, you're hurting the customer at that point. And this is really what you're doing by not helping them get it today, is you're hurting their cooking process for the next 5 years. Well, the one thing that's cool about Cutco that you can't do with the wedding ring, and you can do with the wedding ring, that you can't do with the wedding dresses, you can't upgrade to a better wedding dress later. Though you actually can upgrade to a better wedding ring in the future. But with us, what's great is that the smaller the package, the quality never changes. So you can get them to fall in love with a smaller version of the still awesome Cutco, right? As long as you can start with the husband guarantee, the husband closing. So let's go to the husband closing, Mrs. Jones. And this is in page number 10, actually page 11. Mrs. Jones, you know your spouse better than anyone. If they were here today, you want to say this sentence kind of slowly. Women are really good at visualizing scenarios that actually aren't real, but they can create the vision in their head. Gentlemen, I know that's crazy, right? Because we can't do that very well. This is how men and women are very different from each other, is we actually struggle at doing what we're challenging you to do, but you're very good at it. And it's probably kind of crazy for you to think about the fact that somebody wouldn't be good at this. That's why women feel very confident that they can explain to their husband. Because if the husband explained it to them, they feel like they could understand it. But men would suck at that. That's why nobody ever calls you back, right? So you need to know that as a trained sales professional. So that's why we say, Mrs. Jones, you know your spouse better than anyone. If they were here today, what do you think you would say? Would you say, you know, go ahead and get this and stop overthinking it? Or would he probably tell you to look at a bunch of other options? you're gonna notice that I'm going to say the second option. The option that I'm really thinking I want them to say as the second option. I don't know if you guys know this about like psychology. Whatever you want people to choose, just always put it as the second option. Like, do you want to get Chinese food or you want to go for pizza? What do you think I wanted you to say? The mind typically remembers the final words that are being said around you. So I want them to say something smaller because that is most likely to lead me to a bigger sale. But if all of a sudden she's like, I think he would just tell me to stop overthinking it, then I would say, all right, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to now play the role of your happy spouse. You should stop overthinking this and go for it. Don't you deserve it? I'll throw that don't you deserve it if I feel like I've got a lot of a good rapport with them. Like, don't you deserve it? You just gotta say with a smile. Okay, don't you deserve it? And if she pulls away, be like, well, it sounds like what you really meant to say is maybe look at some other options. I'm gonna try to actually say what she really should be saying. Okay, can I show you maybe some other options that are just as awesome as the homemaker set? That's the sentence that's not in there that I wanted to throw in. Or some other options that are just as awesome as this signature set, just as awesome as the homemaker set. Hey, just as awesome as the homemaker set or signature set. Well, we have a set that a lot of housewives really love and a few different options. And what's great is that the monthly amount is very similar to a trip to the grocery store. And that's when I really will do great on the galley set, especially the galley on the trade-in special, which I think is like $180 a month. Mrs. Jones, it's like a little tiny impulse trip to the grocery store that you do once a month extra for the next 5 months. You ever have to do one extra grocery trip a month? It's kind of like this. It's only for 5 months and you'll have it for the rest of your life. You know, when I'm at the homemaker set, I'll say, Mrs. Jones, it's kind of like a trip to the grocery store. When I'm at the galley set, it's like a tiny impulse trip to the grocery store because you needed a couple extra things. When I'm at like $150 a month, I'll say, Mrs. Jones, it's kind of like a cell phone bill. Most people's cell phone bills are about $100 to $200 because they have like family plans. So when I'm at the starter set, I'll say, Mrs. Jones, it's kind of like a cell phone bill. When I'm at around $100 to $200, I'll say, Mrs. Jones, it's kind of like going out to dinner one time. You ever just been like tired to cook and so let's just go out and get some like, Chili's or something or Olive Garden or just like a regular Mexican restaurant. You'll spend like $100, $110, $150 depending on, how many margaritas we get. It's kind of like that just once a month. Only do that 5 times and you'll have it for the rest of your life. This is where you'll be able to throw back in some of those things that you guys talked about at the beginning of the demo when she's like, but I really want to just, kind of make sure that he sees it. Be like, hey, Mrs. Jones, totally understand. But remember how earlier we were talking about the fact that, he's the one that's buying the tools and the golf clubs because this is kind of the thing that he's the most interested in. It's just going to be impossible for him to be interested in this because this is not the thing that he does. You said that you do most of the cooking. So can I give you a professional recommendation? Can I give you a professional recommendation? Because we don't have a lot of luck with husbands. I've been working here for 6 months and I've never had a housewife that said, I want to talk to my husband and show it to him, ever call me back. And if you did, you need to forget about that person. That's what we call a unicorn flying in the air during Christmas miracles. Okay, do not use those as reasons to be like, well, I guess they did it at one time. You're like, well, this morning I fell into the air and didn't trip. Doesn't mean I'm going to go ice skating. okay, with no ice skates on. That's what I did this morning. We don't have so can I give you my professional recommendation? Why don't we look at a couple of other options to see if any of them are as awesome as the homemaker set? And if no, no big deal. You can always kind of, think about it later. But I think there's a couple of options that you might be, you might feel more comfortable getting today on your own. And you gotta do the nod, and you have to move into like, I'm not saying like mom mode. Like sometimes like mom mode, she's like, I'm just, I know what's best for you. She gets that tone of voice and it just sort of subdues you. Maybe not anymore. Maybe when you were younger. Much younger, like 1 month old. After that, Rebecca stopped listening to her.
I'm just like, because I'm so stubborn.
Maybe grandma.
My mom would fight for everything.
Well, not every mom is like that, but some moms you do need to be a little bit more assertive with. Let me show you the gallery set. This is what we call, and here's what's great about the set. You can always upgrade to a bigger set later. You can always upgrade to the signature set later. You can always upgrade and we can help you get that and we'll get you at the same deal that we've got today. Show all the sets without blocks. This is a good way to just get the knives and that way you can always upgrade to the bigger set later, which is basically just like special number 1 with maybe a couple extra items in it. You can do that. This first question, how much do you think you could get today without your spouse? 50, 100, 125, or is it like whatever you want? I think if you have enough rapport, you can say anything. And whatever they say, move to the set that sounds like that's what it would be like. Per month, obviously, per month. Right, that's how I rationalize that. Well, Mrs. Jones said you get $100 today. So that's all you're spending today. And then if he likes it, then you can keep doing the payments. And if not, we have free return shipping. But if he likes it, you can take credit for making a smart decision. If he likes it, you can take credit for making a smart decision. If your husband doesn't know about Cutco or know the value, he probably will say no. If you like this set, I would just suggest getting a portion of it today so he can try it out. I always bring up Mrs. Jones. That's why there's a massive Cabela store, but the Cabela's website really doesn't sell as much. Unless the person is replacing the thing that they've already purchased. But otherwise, that's why there's the Cabela's land. Because people want to go on and try things and use things and hold things and smell things and wear things to see how it fits. Well, Cutco has a very particular fit in the customer's hand. And so that's why I think that you should just try it out and see what you think. Okay. If you end up getting to the must, even at like 3 knives, you get to the must. 2 knives, you get to the must. Couple of random options you can do. Number 1 is be like, no problem. So if he said yes, what would you do? Like, well, I would get it. Be like, all right, well, I want to put you in a position where he can say yes. What time can I stop by a little later? 6 o'clock or is 8 o'clock better for you? What time can we hop on a Zoom a little later? Is this, or I would try to do it same day, if possible. Might only need about 30 to 40 minutes on that one. Probably don't have to do the full thing, but you might have to do the whole thing. If you're going to the customer's house, yes. If it's just a Zoom demo, yep, try it on that. See if you can position it to a Saturday. Better mood, right? See if you can position it. But I would try to schedule the appointment, even if a penciled in hypothetical, because most wives sort of know what time their spouse will be home, for the most part, within about an hour range. Can we schedule it for that? And if for some reason it doesn't work out, we could just do another day. But I would try to not leave the demo without booking another demo if you do need to do some sort of a partial demo.
Could that be a smoke screen too?
Well, sure, but if you're already at 2 knives, the smoke screen was for it's too much money. Now, yes, if they say no to the follow-up meeting, then what it really meant is we're just not interested in getting in the day. And I have a hard time saying that because you're so nice and you shared your goals with so much confidence, right? So if they say, sure, let's book it, then maybe it was real. Sometimes every once in a while, people are honest, but most of the time it's just like too much money. Or, I just bought like a $400 course yesterday and, kind of feeling like I'm sort of tapped out for a couple of days. Sometimes that happens. Like in my house, we didn't spend money, like a lot of money for the last like couple of weeks after we got back from our trip. Even though we can afford it, we were just like, yeah, we kind of need to slow down because I don't know what's gonna, hey, we just, took this trip, and so we didn't do a couple of things for the last couple of weeks. Now, Homemaker said I probably wouldn't have bought it. One night for two, I probably would. Like, we can't spend money, doesn't mean we can't spend any money. It's just we can't spend an amount of money that would make us feel like it's an investment. No investments for the next chunk of time. But like $100, like that's not it. You can spend that even if you are on a little bit of a spending breeze. Okay, as long as you're talking to somebody that it's like full-time job. Okay, all right. Any other questions on the housewife scenario? Any other scenarios that you weren't sure how to handle that have happened to you recently?
I mean, this lady yesterday was just like, I don't wanna look at anything else. If I'm getting something, I want that. Like, I don't wanna look at anything smaller. And it was just like, got up, her husband was there, got up, tried to get him to come over so I could give him a little.
Oh yeah, okay, this scenario.
And he was
This-
just like, no.
This is a scenario that you were already dead in the water at this point, but here's how you prevent that from happening. If you get onto a virtual demo, and the wife is there, you have to ask, is your spouse around? You gotta ask it at the beginning. Wouldn't that be nice to get that out of the way at the beginning? Okay, hey, Mrs. Jones, how's it going today? Cool. What do you have going on? Is your spouse around? Okay, because I mean, what time was this appointment?
It was,
Yeah, which is kind of a surprising
Yeah.
time sometimes for both spouses to be home together. So you kind of might have not even thought about it to do it that way, but. I don't know, sometimes in the background you can kind of hear stuff going on. Was there no tell, nothing?
No.
No tell?
she wasn't even like looking off camera. She was just solely focused.
Yeah.
on me. And then just like.
So again, just put that into, I mean, it's a 1 second question. How can it hurt?
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, is your spouse around or anything like that? Especially if you know that she has one.
I hate like assuming too, cause what if I ask, they're like, oh no, I'm not married.
By the way, that's okay. You guys have to, how do you become comfortable with that? Be like, cool. You just say cool and move on. Don't be like, oh, I'm sorry for your lack of, being able to hold down a relationship. I can give you some tips on that, Mrs. Jones, if you'd like. I've been,
Psychologist, let me tell you.
yeah, I'm a future psychologist and I've had a relationship for 1 year. I'm very fitful at least. Come on, Mrs. Jones, let's go together. Maybe let's get you some clear gel nails or something. All right. Be like, I'll come over, I'll get you a nice dress. We'll go out on the weekends. All right. So if the spouse is there, here's what you need to do. Is it okay if I say hi? I wanted to, I like saying hi to everybody. And he'll be like, And then you got to ask this question. Especially if you're at the customer's house, Christian, this kind of stuff can be really helpful. The husband is at any point of this question you got to ask. Especially if you don't want that shit to happen to you at the end of the demo. Hey, Mr. Jones, do you kind of want to check this out at all? Or is it okay for your wife to get whatever she wants? And you just smile.
That's a
Mr.
nugget.
Jones, you like that, Jordan?
Yes. Yeah. I do that at events too. If I'm at an event and a husband and a wife are there and the husband
Yeah.
starts walking off and be like, hey, Mr. Jones, real quick, before you go, is it okay if your wife gets whatever she wants here today? That way you get the permission.
Yeah. And if he's like, it's whatever, we'll be like, Miss Jones, you hear that? Let's keep going. All right. Don't make it into like a big celebration. Be like, all right, Mrs. Jones, give me your credit card. Rejection is futile. No, it's more like you say that you have to say it with a smile. You got to kind of know how to land it. Mr. Jones, did you kind of want to check some of this stuff out, or is it just can she just get whatever she wants? Okay. And if he wants to check it out, then you better get to the forever guarantee pretty quick. Rope cutting, leather cutting, penny cutting.
Which I forgot to take the pennies yesterday.
Rebecca can cut a penny now, finally. We taught her how to do it.
You were there. Yeah.
Like some guys
Mm.
get kind of like bored with the goals.
Uh-huh.
If like he like does that and he comes in before you share your goals with the wife.
Mhm.
Like if you want us to get into the forever guarantee as soon as we can. But your goals take like 10 minutes.
Your goals take 10 minutes.
Well, like build a report down.
Sure. What you can do is you can pull him back. Be like, hey, is your husband still around? Be like, can you grab him for something? I wanted to make sure he heard this next part of the presentation.
Maybe like explain in the beginning of like the night.
Be like, and I would say, hey, Mr. Jones, I know that you guys don't have to get anything, but there is one part that I wanted to get your opinion on. Mr. Jones, you ever heard of Craftsman Tool or Snap-on Tools? Cool, let me tell you about Cutco's Forever Guarantee. And at that point, he'll kind of stick around as long as he wants. If he's kind of interested, he'll stick around. If not, at least he heard like the main selling points, right? Like some of the things that it would kind of help him feel more confident about it. Okay.
When I had my essentials set last week, I was doing a demo with the wife,
Mhm.
and then, we got down to the start. I didn't even show the other four. I just showed the studio and the essentials. I knew that she really wanted the table knives first.
Yeah.
And then, she was like, let me go grab my husband. So I showed him the double D edge video and the Forever Guarantee. He was like, okay, that was it.
Okay, so that's it. That's nails right there. Right, so the husband comes in, you have to immediately do those two things. Okay, and again, I would say that's gonna work some of the time. It seemed like it worked on that one, but you were also at an essential set. We're
Right.
talking like less than 200 a month.
Yeah.
Right? It can help. So again, double the edge video and the Forever Guarantee stuff. And if you want to go extra testimonials, maybe it could be also another good one. But otherwise, if he walks in at the ultimate set and he says yes, then he didn't need to walk into the ultimate set. She didn't even need him there. Because if he just says yes, then then she could have done it herself. Right, because the purchasing, it wasn't like an issue. My point is that it's much more common for that to work at the end when you're at like 3 to 5 knives, which is basically the essential scenario. Any other scenarios that you weren't sure how to handle or? Again, they fall in love. Be like, hey, Mrs. Jones, I'm gonna put down on my wish list ultimate set 100% no matter what. But you know, I can't do my job. And I think I texted you like a variation of this, Kaylee. It's like, hey, because I'm in a push right now, I'm actually really pushing myself to make sure I show everybody all their options. Do you mind if I do that just so I can do my job right? Do you mind if I do that just so I can commit to my push? Do you mind if I just do that because it really helps me with my training? You're always in training, by the way. Like you never should feel like I'm done with training because otherwise, what are we doing here? So you can always just like, hey, is it okay? Because you know, I've got some like extra little bonus sets that I just learned about. Do you mind if I just show you everything? And at that point, you want to kind of pull that, well, when you're closing on the trade-in special galley set, like close on it. Just read the script as if the customer had never even said, I don't want to buy anything. So just read the script and, you know, somebody's like, I really, really only want to buy this. Sometimes you actually won't really be able to sell a galley or a homemaker set or essential set because that's a set, but you can definitely sell 3 to 4 knives. That might be more of a realistic purchase at that point because it doesn't make them feel like they're buying a smaller set. It makes them feel like they're buying just like a couple of introduction pieces. Then you can always upgrade to a bigger set later. In fact, when you buy the set, we can just return those ones that you've already got duplicates of. So it'll be like you only bought it one time. You got to kind of fight a little bit for it. You got to fight for the sale. What I'm really doing is I'm fighting for the customer who's in a, you know, toxic mental space in that moment. You know, but you can't win them all. Can't win them all. That one was just a no sale that sounded like a, you know, it was like the greatest first date ever, but you find out he's an ex-con.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I get it. It sounded really good. He's got the washboard ads, but there's a reason he got him. All right. So, any other questions, any other scenarios? And I'm all over the analogies today. Questions going once? Drazen, Jordan, any other husband or spouse scenarios that you've dealt with recently that you're not sure how to handle? Questions going twice?